chat pod, please do so now. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. And as a reminder, please place the name of the presenter that you wish the question to be addressed to at the beginning of the question. We see some questions coming in right now, and the first group of questions will be addressed to Dr. Boam. And here's the first question. Does the requirement of the CARES Act to have a risk mitigation plan regarding drug shortage apply to contract?
Hi, thank you for that question. So the requirement of the CARES Act applies to finished product manufacturers and API manufacturers, as well as manufacturers of certain medical devices. This is a topic we plan to explore more fully in the guidance that's under development on risk management plans. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question. How common is it to use the alternative tools, MRAs and IREs, compared to record review?
So FDA has been using records requests under Section 704A4 of the Act for quite a while. We've also been using inspection reports from our MRA partners for several years now. So we have more experience with those types of tools than we do with the remote interactive evaluations. Those are a newer tool that we are starting to get experience with in response to the pandemic. So at present, I would say MRA inspection report and records reviews are more common. But as we continue to work through the pandemic and travel restrictions, I expect we'll start to see a growing number of remote interactive evaluations used. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question for Dr. Boam. What happens to COVID-related guidance documents after the public health emergency is over?
So there has been a special docket set up for the COVID guidances that allows the public to comment on them. And for each of the guidances that we have issued during the public health emergency, FDA will be taking another look at the topic of the guidance and determine whether it's appropriate to go forward either as is or in some modified version for use or implementation after the pandemic is declared to be over. So we certainly encourage your comments to that docket on any of those guidances, and those comments will be considered.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question for Dr. Boam. How do we know what guidance FDA is planning to publish?
Thanks, Ray. So FDA has a public guidance agenda that's available on our website, and we publish this every year. And on several years, we have updated it during the middle of the year. So you may find it updated in twice a year. And that public guidance agenda provides a list of the draft and revised draft guidances that we plan to issue in that year. We do not list final guidances because, generally speaking, once we have issued a draft or revised draft, we do intend to finalize that guidance. So they're not listed separately. But if we've issued that guidance in draft, you can expect that we would try to move forward with it as a final. But consult that CDER public guidance agenda on our website, and you can get a sense across the center what types of guidance are in development and expected for publication. Thanks.
Thank you for responding to that question. Looks like we have a couple more questions for Dr. Boam. Here's the next question. What are remote interactive evaluations, also known as RIEs?
Yeah, thank you. There's been a lot of interest in remote interactive evaluations, and these are ways that we can engage with a manufacturing facility or a bioresearch monitoring site to cover a number of the issues and areas that we would normally cover on an inspection. And so this may happen through teleconference, through sharing of electronic versions of records. This may also occur through video live streaming. So I certainly refer folks to the guidance that we recently published, as it outlines both considerations for when FDA would determine to do an RIE, as well as some of the logistical issues about how we'll work with the facility in question to set that up and make it happen. Thanks.
Thanks for responding to that question. We have one final question this round for Dr. Boam. Here's the question. Can the public comment on a final guidance such as with COVID-related guidances?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a public docket set up for all of our guidances. And so even once a guidance is finalized, whether it be a COVID-related guidance or just a normal guidance that FDA publishes, there's always an opportunity for the public to comment. And we do look to those dockets for comments on a regular basis and can determine if we might need to make revisions to a guidance or perhaps there are comments that suggest a different guidance or a new guidance is needed. So I refer you to those public dockets. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that group of questions. Our next group of questions will go to Dr. Maguire. And here's the first question. You mentioned using data from social media to obtain information for quality surveillance. Do you have an example of what you would do with this information?
Hi, thank you for that question. Yeah, one recent example of where we've tried to use information available on social media is scraping the comments that patients are using on WebMD. And in that case, what we've done is use text analytics to take those comments and analyze the sentiment, whether it was positive or negative. And then we've taken that information and compared it to information we had on those drug products to see if we could potentially use the sentiment of feedback on forums like WebMD as an early indication of problems with drugs that result in recalls. So hopefully this gives you a flavor for the type of analysis we're trying to do and make routine in the Office of Quality Surveillance. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question for Dr. Maguire. Is the site level of quality management maturity shared with the manufacturing site?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is our intention to share the outcome of the quality management maturity assessment with the site that's undergone the assessment. We feel that the information is critical to them to it's critical to them for their continual improvement efforts. And so we definitely would make available the full outcome of the assessment and how they performed in all of the different program areas and topic areas that will be assessed so they can use that information to continually improve. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for responding to that question. Our next question. How will a manufacturer benefit from participating in the Quality Management Maturity Program?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I think it's also tied to being able to use the results of the assessment to shine a light on areas where the company may not be aware that they're not quite as mature as they think they are, and then building on that information and initiating projects to continually improve. So the incentive for being involved in the quality management maturity program would be to continually refine your maturity and improve. And then in the future, we also plan to talk through if there's particular incentives that we may offer for participation in the program, but we have not determined what those incentives might be at this time. I know that's a very popular question I've gotten in other forums, so I thought I'd mention it here. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for responding to that question. Looks like we have a couple more questions for Dr. Maguire, and here's the next question. Is rubric or other details for specific metrics under QMM available for industry at pilot stages?
So we definitely have not published the rubric or the framework that we're building. At this point, it's still in development, and yeah, as I mentioned in my timeline slide, we plan to start conducting assessments in the May timeframe. So it's not publicly available now, but as I mentioned also in my talk, we're building from efforts that are already ongoing. And so I think if you're familiar with the research that St. Gallen has done and their work in operational excellence, as well as PDA's quality culture initiative and the types of questions that are asked in assessing quality culture, and ISPE's efforts to advance pharmaceutical quality, those ongoing initiatives give you a flavor for the type of questions that we feel are important and would be part of a quality management maturity rubric, if you will. So hopefully you can take a look at some of those other tools to get some more information. So thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question for Dr. Maguire. Will QMM participation be mandatory?
No, participation in quality management maturity will be voluntary. It's a voluntary program.
Thank you for responding to that question. One last question for Dr. Maguire. How will learnings from the QMM pilot be shared?
So in the same way that we've shared the learnings from our quality metrics site visit program and feedback program during conferences from the podium, I anticipate that we'll do the same for quality management maturity. So after those pilots conclude and we've had a chance to really synthesize the learnings and our key takeaways, I anticipate that we'll be able to share those high-level learnings and future direction in talks similar to the one I'm giving today. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. And the next set of questions will be directed to Dr. Boam. And here's the next question. Has the FDA been notified of possible container closure shortages, or is this formation of the guidance a proactive response to the risks posed by the COVID-19 pandemic?
Thanks for that question. We have received questions from manufacturers wanting to understand what kind of flexibility might be available if they need to make changes in their container closure system due to supply chain challenges, and wanted to make this guidance available given the number of questions that we'd received. And so we hope that outlining both sort of clarifying the guidance, current guidance recommendations and outlining some flexibilities will help should manufacturers run into supply chain issues.
Thank you for responding to that question. The next question for Dr. Boam. You mentioned about partner regulatory authorities. Who are they? And are they identified through the mutual recognition agreements?
Yes, so FDA has a mutual recognition agreement with the European Union, which includes the 27 member states of the European Union, as well as with the UK. And so when we talk about using inspection reports from MRA partners, That means inspection reports from any of the inspectorates in the UK or across the European Union. When we initiated the MRA agreements, we were initially utilizing inspection reports where those inspectorates were doing inspections of facilities in their own countries. But during the pandemic, we did the work to evaluate their inspections that took place for facilities outside of their home countries and determined that we could use those reports as well. So now we use MRA partner inspectorate inspection reports for facilities around the world. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that group of questions. The next few questions will be directed to Dr. Maguire, and here's the first question. Will FDA publish a guidance on QMM?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I would refer you to the website that Ashley mentioned that will give you an idea of all of the guidance the agency is currently working on. Thank you.
Thank you for responding to that question. It looks like we have time for just about one more question, and here's the question. How will QMM be assessed in the future? Will this be a self-assessment tool or an inspection?
That's a great question. So during the pandemic, on-site visits for quality management maturity assessments as part of the pilot program were not feasible. So for the pilot, we're using a self-assessment tool and then a facilitated virtual follow-on to that, where we can ask the company about how they reached their self-assessment answers and to look for some evidence that substantiates their self-assessment. But moving forward, we envision that quality management maturity assessments would be conducted on-site and that they would be conducted separately from routine GMP inspections because the rubric is different, the intent of the assessment is different. So they would be standalone on-site assessments conducted either by the agency or potentially even a third party. So thank you for that question.
Thank you to our Q&A panel for answering numerous questions that came in during the panel time. We're going to move now into our lunch break that will last until 12:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Enjoy your lunch.